This is CBC Radio 1, 91.5 FM in Ottawa.
I'm Anna Maria Tremonti, and you're listening to The Current. Still to come, The Current's Friday host, David Common, will join me in half an hour to go through some of your emails and social media musings on the stories we've brought you in the past week. But first, Canadian forces have had their first airstrikes in Syria, and ISIS strikes close to the heart of the Syrian capital inside what was once supposed to be a refuge from the regional storm. Some 8 kilometers from the center of Damascus, the capital of Syria, is Yarmouk, a refugee camp, mostly for Palestinians, and today especially an extremely desolate place. Under siege, under bombardment, very little goes in, very little comes out. But these two voices were recorded by the BBC this week from inside the camp.
The regime keeps hitting Yarmouk with airstrikes and barrel bombs. There are hundreds of wounded. Bodies are lying in the streets. We can't get to some of them because of IS snipers.
Today, we ran out of food, and now it's the 5th day without water. No aid at all is getting into the camp. We have been under siege here for 750 days.
Yes, 750 days. When the UN Security Council held an emergency meeting Monday to discuss the Yarmouk refugee camp, the head of the UN's Agency for Palestinian Refugees described the situation there as, and I'm quoting, completely catastrophic. It certainly has been some time since Yarmouk could have been considered a safe haven, though that may be how it started. Since December 2012, it has been under a blockade by the government of Bashar al-Assad. Now, a fresh new hell as ISIS militants have overrun the camp in the past week, controlling by some accounts as much as 80 or 90% of the area now. For ISIS, this is a move into the heart of the Syrian capital. For the refugees of Yarmouk, it is a humanitarian crisis. Salim Salamah is the head of Palestinian League for Human Rights-Syria. He was born in Yarmouk. He got out in 2012. Today he lives in Malmö, Sweden, and that's where we've reached him. Hello.
Good morning, Anna Maria.
First of all, what are you hearing from people you know who are still in Yarmouk since ISIS came in?
Horrific accounts that words cannot really describe. I think what the two voices you had from BBC talked about is just exactly what's going on over there. They were talking about this is the 5th day without food, and now we are on the 9th day without food, which is already a very rare thing in the camp since 2 years, and without water since September 2014 because of the use of the Syrian regime, the use of water as a tool of war over there.
And so not only do they not have the basic supplies they need, I would imagine they are in danger of being brutalized.
They have been already brutalized in the last 3 years, in fact. There have been a lot of random shelling, endless random shelling by the forces of the Syrian regime over the camp, and there has been a lot of military operations, aerial military operations taking place. There have been also a lot of military operations or escalations taking place on the UNRWA points of food distribution when people come to the northern exit of the camp to receive their food packages, which did not exceed 131 days of distribution in 2014. So this is another chapter and an ongoing hell that started in December 2012.
And we've heard, we just heard in those clips what they were saying, but what happens if they get hurt? Like, what about medical supplies? What about any kind of clinics, hospitals?
In fact, there is two hospitals in Yarmouk camp. One of them is functioning in the minimum, and the other situation is really in bad condition. Yesterday, we've got a testimony from a paramedic working in Palestine hospital, and the main message that we get that since which we already know and which we've already tried to dismiss, but unfortunately it fell into deaf earth, that there is no medical supplies, emergency medications or antibiotics or any form of emergency medication since at least 1 year. Now they are managing to function with a great staff of dedicated 40 paramedic with 2 doctors, but they cannot function forever in those conditions. If they do not receive urgent medical supplies and urgent medical expertise, they cannot continue what they have been doing since 2 years with minimum requirements. So you can imagine.
Salim, now you left in 2012. You got out. Who are the people who are still there?
In fact, two types of people. The vast majority, people who have no other place to go in case they leave Yarmouk. People who tried to leave Yarmouk once or twice and they just ended up in public gardens without any protection, without any roof above their heads. So it's people who are living not only under poverty line, but under all lines of a human dignity. Those are the vast majority, constituting the 18,000 people who were trapped inside the camp since 2 years before ISIS gets into the camp. And there is a tiny minority who does not simply want to get off the camp for reasons related to the fact that they want to stay in their houses, they want to die in their houses, and they want to resist within their houses.
You know, I know, I've seen the pictures over the last 2 years, even so much of it is destroyed, like the buildings.
It is an extremely difficult situation. And you know, since the beginning of the ISIS operation on the ground, it was complemented by an extremely massive and intense bombardment from the air by the forces of the Syrian regime with more than 30-barrel bomb, a very primitive weapon where you just put a lot of TNT inside a barrel bomb with a lot of sharpnels and anything that can kill and destroy. And then you throw it indiscriminately into any target. Before yesterday, one of the barrel bombs targeted a cemetery in the camp. And yesterday it targeted the only functioning hospital and the minimum Palestine hospital. We're just expecting a massacre in the coming days in case there is no real international movement to stop what's going on.
You grew up there. What was life like in Yarmouk when you were growing up?
It's a very vibrant culture and economic and political hub of the capital Damascus. It is where the Palestinian heritage flourished in the last 60 years following the Palestinian Nakba in 1948. It is where a lot of younger Palestinian generation grew up. At least 3 generations of Palestinian refugees in Syria grew up and constituted their identity, their Palestinian-Syrian identity. What's going on is horrific by all means. Just a systematic destruction of the Palestinian existence in Syria.
And now this is a refugee camp, but it really would, if you were to go through it before all of this, it would look like a suburb or a smaller city, would it not?
It is a very developed town, actually, with several banks, different NGOs, uncountable number of small business, and different commercial sectors. It's just as any other suburb of Damascus within the urban boundaries of Damascus.
And how did it go from being a safe refuge to being under siege like this?
In fact, since the beginning of the Syrian Popular Movement, there has been a lot of random shelling targeting the areas neighboring Yarmouk. Many shells fell in Yarmouk, causing a lot of casualties throughout 2011 and 2012. However, in December 2012, the Syrian regime escalated by targeting a mosque, a hospital, and a school that was sheltering refugees from outside Yarmouk. The bombing took place on the 16th of December by a MiG jet fighter, causing scores of dead, which we still cannot verify, but at least above 40 to 50. That triggered anti-government sentiments by opposition fighters in areas neighboring Yarmouk, and they seized control over the camp. Starting from 2013, clashes became a daily routine, and in the July 2013, a full blockade was imposed in the camp, causing the death of 200 people because of starvation in 2014, all documented by our colleagues in Amnesty International and with our efforts in the Palestinian League for Human Rights.
It's a horrific story. Salim, thank you for bringing us up to date.
Thank you so much, Anna Maria.
Salim Salamah. He was born in Yarmouk. He lived there until 2012. He's the head of the Palestinian League for Human Rights, Syria. He lives now in Malmö, Sweden, and that's where we reached him.